My name is Natalie, 33 years old, and my mother-in-law asked me, just me, to prepare the anniversary party for my and my husband's 8th wedding anniversary. I reluctantly said, I agree. But after that, I got on a plane and left, leaving behind a chaotic party for them, my husband, and his mistress. If you've ever spent a whole decade trying to please a family that isn't your own, then this story is for you. Before I tell you the full sequence of my actions, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to start listening right now. I'm a personal financial consultant, and my work is mostly done online at home. I only go out when a client needs support. That is also why my mother-in-law, Melody, thinks I'm unemployed or just doing part-time work. I don't bother to explain. On Sunday morning, exactly 1 week before the 8th anniversary of my marriage to Carter, while I was still polishing the gleaming granite kitchen in our home in Lansing, Michigan, where we moved 5 years ago, the phone rang. The screen showed my mother-in-law's name, Melody. I hesitated before picking up, and her voice came through with that familiar tone, both sweet and pressuring. Natalie, I think you should host a really elegant evening for the 8th anniversary. There'll be about 38 guests, including Carter's partners. As for the menu, I'll leave that to you, just as long as there's nothing with soy like last time. Oh, and Carter said you're not too busy this week, right? I swallowed back a refusal, but only managed a strained smile. Yes, I'll prepare it. When the call ended, I sank down into the chair, still holding the mop. My breath caught. 3 years ago, at a party just like that, I had done everything myself. The menu, shopping, cooking, arranging, hosting, while Carter was busy, meeting with his partners. I was hospitalized right after that party from exhaustion and hypoglycemia, but no one ever mentioned it, as if it had never happened. On the table, I opened my laptop to draft a menu list, and the FaceTime rang. It was my mother, Rose, who lives in Portland, Oregon, where I grew up. Her face was still gentle, but her eyes brimmed with expectations. When I briefly told her about my mother-in-law's request, she only laughed. Back in the day, I had to handle both sides of the family. We women have to know how to manage, dear. That's how you keep happiness. I nodded, but inside me was a vast emptiness. I wanted to ask, and what about me? Who keeps me? But I stayed silent. When I stepped into the backyard for air, Mrs. Marlene, the 70-year-old neighbor, living alone in the mid-century house next door, was watering her lavender. She saw me holding a notebook, my face a little dazed, and smirked. Another party, huh? God, they must think you're the head chef at the Ritz. I made some lemon sauce, take it. At least every dish will taste a little more like you. I chuckled, thanked her, and walked back inside. But my heart sank. No one sees me as someone who needs love, only as someone who must carry the weight. Hours later, while I was checking prices on Italian grilled cheese sandwiches, my phone flashed a message from Emily, my best friend, a travel guide. Is Carter home? She asked. I replied, no, he's at a coworker's birthday. Seconds later, she sent a photo, Carter kissing a blonde woman at the front desk of the Hyatt Place Hotel, downtown Lansing. That woman was no stranger. She was Sierra, my husband's secretary. My vision blurred. My hand dropped the phone onto the tile floor. I didn't cry. I only felt my heart being squeezed tight. I looked back at the menu list on my laptop. Italian salad, honey-roasted chicken, cheesecake, all to serve the man who had deceived me and the family who always treated me like a silent accessory to Carter. I quietly pulled out the trash bin, tore up every note, every handwritten menu line, and burned them in the backyard oven. In the crackle of burning paper, I clearly heard my own voice inside my head. If you want a party, I'll give you the last party of your life. Monday morning, the Lansing sky was gray and still, as if it too knew something was about to change. I sat in my old moss-green Subaru parked outside the city library, clutching my phone, my finger sliding to Samuel Martinez in my contacts, a former client of mine, and also a private investigator whom I'd helped through financial trouble last year. He'd once said something I never forgot. No matter who it is, they leave a trace. I pressed call. The phone rang only twice before his voice came, low and brisk. Natalie? What's wrong? I bit my lip, replied softly. I need your help. It's personal. Urgent. 2 hours later, we met at a quiet cafe behind the bowling alley, where Samuel often met off-record clients. He was the same as ever, wrinkled shirt, khaki jacket, eyes narrowed, as if seeing through words. I placed an envelope before him containing the photo of Carter kissing his secretary, along with 2 addresses, my home and Carter's company. Samuel didn't ask much. He looked at the photo for a few seconds, then nodded. I need 5 days. I'll shadow both of them, lunch breaks, after hours, weekends if anything unusual comes up. But I need him not to know you suspect anything. I nodded, my voice steady. I won't change a thing. Still the perfect wife they think I am. Samuel took out 2 small black boxes from his bag, thin as hard drives, and opened them. One was a keychain camera, the other a tiny camera to install in a headboard or lamp. If you really want to know everything, put one in his car and one in your bedroom, the place he thinks you'd never suspect. I held the boxes, my palms sweating. It felt like holding small bombs, but this time the bombs were in my hands, not anyone else's. Samuel leaned forward, speaking softly like a benediction. I know you're smart, but in this matter, I hope you're also cold enough. I left the cafe as the clock neared 2 p.m. When I got home, Carter was on a video call with his mother in his office. I passed by, smiling as always. Inside, I thought of the white gray-trimmed bedsheet in our bedroom. Tonight, I would mount the camera behind the bedside lamp. I thought of the key tray in Carter's car, where the keychain camera would blend in with his keys as if it had always been there. Before going into the kitchen, I looked out the window, where Mrs. Marlene was cutting roses in her garden. She glanced up, caught my gaze, then pointed to a small box on the boundary wall between our houses. Dried lavender tea. Helps you sleep deep. Looks like you're going to need it. I walked over, took the tea box, and nodded gently. Thank you. You always know what I need before I do. Mrs. Marlene smiled. When I was your age, I wished someone had told me. Don't let your kindness erase you. Back in the kitchen, I brewed my first cup of tea from her box. And as the steam curled into the sunlight slanting through the blinds, I quietly wrote 2 bold words in my notebook. Day 1, the pact begins. That night, as Carter stepped out of the shower, still wrapped in a towel and scrolling through messages on his phone, I sat on the edge of the bed, pretending to be tense. My voice trembled slightly, as if I had just received bad news. Carter, my mom's chronic illness has gotten worse these past few days. The doctor says she needs more monitoring. I want to fly back to Portland for a few days. Or, will you come with me? I think she needs you too. Carter looked up, blinked, then gave a tired smile. Natalie, you know this week I'm swamped. There are so many pending contracts, and Friday I've got to meet the board. I can't skip. I nodded, my eyes glistening as though I might cry. But inside, a storm rose. Exactly as I predicted. He would choose work, or rather, choose his freedom over family. I lightly touched his arm, my voice fading. I understand. You stay. I'll go alone. Carter kissed my forehead, a kiss so cold it was hollow, then turned to pick up the suit already hanging. The gesture felt like a man touching his schedule, not his wife. The next morning, he drove me to Lansing Airport in his black Lexus. Along the way, he kept taking calls, his voice clipped. Yes, I'll send the plans ASAP. Right, just let her fly. I'll handle everything here. I sat quietly in the passenger seat, watching Lansing recede through the window, my heart heavy, but my face still carrying the look of a dutiful wife. I tilted my head to look at him one last time before getting out, searching for a trace of tenderness. But all there was were busy eyes and a pat on the shoulder. Go on, Natalie. Call me if anything comes up. As Carter turned the car away, I stood still at the airport entrance, hand on my suitcase, my heart shrouded in a misty haze. The plane took off an hour later, heading straight to Portland, Oregon, where my parents live. I chose a window seat, watching the white clouds churn below, and told myself, he thinks I'm just a bird leaving the nest, but really, this is the moment the iron cage begins to crack. In my suitcase, I carried only a few clothes, a brown leather notebook, and an old photo of my parents and me in front of the fireplace. I knew I wasn't simply visiting my mother. This was the beginning of an experiment, where Carter would expose everything he was hiding. As the plane trembled slightly during takeoff, I closed my eyes. The image of that mechanical kiss at the airport returned, a stamp sealing 8 years of exhausted marriage. And I smiled faintly. One last link. You just handed it to me. Tuesday afternoon in Portland, the rain drizzled like smoke. I sat alone in my old bedroom, the walls a pale cream and the smell of old wood lingering, the shelves still lined with the books I had neatly stacked back in high school. My laptop balanced on my knees, I entered the private access code Samuel had sent. An app streaming directly from the keychain camera hidden in Carter's car. My heart pounded. The screen was black, then flickered to life. In the first seconds, only the front seats, the dashboard, faint strains of classical music. Then suddenly, the car door opened. Carter slid into the driver's seat, trailing behind him that familiar blonde, Sierra, his secretary. My lips went dry. They said something I couldn't hear, but their eyes told enough. Carter tilted his head and kissed her. Not rushed, not hidden, but kissed her, as if that car belonged to them alone, and the world outside was just a blurred backdrop. I shot up from the bed, rushed to the bathroom. Before I could shut the door, I vomited. My stomach was empty, only convulsing in painful spasms, as if my body was trying to expel poisoned air. Leaning against the sink, sweat breaking across my temples, I looked at myself in the mirror. Hair disheveled, eyes red, lips pale. But the whiteness of my face was not from sickness, but from truth made too clear. I didn't need the next clip. Yet my hand still opened it, as if controlled by someone else inside me. This time, Carter reclined the back seat. She giggled, climbing over the front. I hit the stop button. My heart clenched like a small tear being ripped wider. I went down to the kitchen after washing my face. My mother was making apple pie, the recipe I'd learned from her at 10. When she saw me, she asked nothing, only held out a bowl of peeled apple slices. I quietly took a knife and began slicing the cold butter thin. For several minutes, the kitchen held only the sound of knife on board and the old radio playing classical music. Remember the first time you made this? She asked, eyes on the dough. I nodded. That year you wanted to bring pie to class but burned the bottom crust. I stayed up past midnight to bake another and wrote your name on the tin. I let out a laugh, small as a hiccup. She handed me a slice of apple. Eat, it'll help your stomach settle. That simple line made my eyes sting. The little girl who once carried a tin of pie to school was now hiding cameras to expose the man she had called family. I looked at her, her face older than my memory, but her hands still steady, her eyes still kind. 5 years ago, I miscarried at 6 weeks. Carter was in Miami, meeting clients, his phone off for 8 hours. I curled alone in the emergency room. I never told my mother, never cried properly. I simply went home, put on my work dress, and arranged flowers as usual. But today, for a slice of apple and a silent look, I knew. It was time she knew what I had lost. I was pregnant, I said, my voice small as wind through curtains. 5 years ago. I lost it. I told no one. My mother froze, then turned to look at me. Without a word, she took my hand and held it tightly. That night, I texted Samuel, I've seen the first footage. Continue. Then I turned off my phone, laid my head on the old lavender-embroidered pillow. Sleep came late, but for the first time in years, I didn't dream of cooking for others. The next morning, I went out for coffee, then had lunch with a few old high school friends. Through the whole meeting, I mostly listened silently as they talked. Gold prices up, the stock market rising, even Bitcoin climbing. That evening, I sat hugging my knees on the bed in my old room, the warm yellow lamplight spilling over my open notebook, and the laptop still paused on the video. In that stillness, Mrs. Marlene's face suddenly rose in my mind. Not through a screen, but as if she were standing just beyond the wooden fence in Lansing, where her lavender bushes were starting to bloom pale purple in the early summer breeze. The memory pulled me back to that Sunday afternoon, before I left. Right after tearing up the anniversary party menu, I was tidying my potted plants when her voice drifted over. "They gave you another party, didn't they?" I forced a smile, dirt still on my hands. This time 38 people, for the 8th wedding anniversary. And as always, no one to help. Mrs. Marlene shook her head, set down her pruning shears, and walked through the side gate, a habit she'd had since we first moved in. She sat on the wooden chair next to me, wiped her hands with a small red-edged cloth, then poured tea from the stainless flask she always carried. Lavender, honey, and a few drops of apple cider vinegar. "Drink, good for the silent stomach." I held the cup, not looking at her, only sighed. "Do you think I'm forgiving too much? Is it possible for someone to love you and still trample you without realizing?" She didn't answer right away. She waited until I took the first sip, then spoke, her voice low, like leaves falling on the back patio tiles. "Yes. There are plenty who love you in the way. They need you like an appliance, like a coffee machine. Every morning, push a button, get what they want. But they never ask, does the machine need a break?" I looked at her. The afternoon sun slanted across the eaves, casting a quiet halo on her white hair. "I lived that way for 20 years, she said, eyes fixed on the camellia shedding petals. "Walter, my husband, cheated 3 times. Each time I forgave. I thought I was kind. But later, I understood. I didn't forgive out of love, but out of fear. Fear of losing face. Fear of being alone. Fear of the crack breaking the shell of happiness I tried to keep." I swallowed. My eyes stung. Not from anger at Carter, but because I saw myself in her words more than in the mirror. And then? And then he died in another woman's bed? At 63, she turned to me, her voice steady. "That day I didn't cry. Didn't hurt. But I also had nothing left. Because for 20 years, I erased myself under the name of forgiveness." I bowed my head. My chest tightened. "Forgiveness is a gift." She placed her hand over mine. "But only when the other person has the character to honor it. Otherwise, forgiveness is a deed transferring the right to trample you." A light breeze carried the scent of night jasmine near the wall. I looked at her, whispered, "How do you know you're forgiving at the right time?" She smiled, not bitter, but like someone who's walked through a long winter, when forgiveness doesn't make you smaller, when you still have your voice, when the other knows to stop. If not, then it's not forgiveness. It's erasing yourself. That was the last time I saw her before leaving Lansing, but her words stayed with me, like a shard of mirror quietly placed in my hand, reflecting exactly what I was enduring, but had not dared to name. Back in the present, I wrote in my notebook, "Don't forgive to save the marriage. Save yourself." That afternoon, Portland was overcast, thick gray clouds like a fabric woven the wrong way. I sat in the small upstairs library of my mother's house, where I once prepped for college exams, with the mahogany desk and window looking out onto a backyard of fallen leaves. The laptop was open. I entered the code for the second camera, the one I had taped behind the right bedside lamp in our bedroom in Lansing just before leaving. I expected nothing. I didn't expect nothing. I just needed confirmation. Part of me still clung to a corner of hope that Carter wouldn't violate the most sacred place of our marriage, the bed we had chosen together on our 2nd anniversary after my miscarriage, the bed where I had lain motionless for 3 days after losing our first child, with Carter's pillow beside me as a temporary anchor. The video began with soft noises, A door opening, footsteps, the sound of a coat falling onto a chair. The frame trembled, then steadied, and in that instant, the woman entered. Her. The blonde secretary, in a tight dress, holding a glass of wine, giggling. Carter followed, tossing his keys onto the table in unconscious habit. He took off his shirt, then pulled her close, kissed her right in front of the camera. The next movements made my skin burn and my chest hollow as if carved out. They didn't just kiss. They climbed onto the bed. My bed. The white gray trimmed sheets, chosen and washed by me every weekend. The down comforter I had wrapped myself in when I found out I was pregnant. The small wedding photo on the nightstand. She even picked it up, examined it, then flipped it face down, as if in a harmless joke. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't shake. I simply turned off the video, closed the laptop, and walked out into the hallway like another person. Something in me died in that moment. Not love, but illusion. I went down to the kitchen. My mother was boiling eggs. The smell of vinegar and mustard hung faint in the air. She turned, seeing my bloodless face, about to ask something, but I stopped her. "Mom, I need to go out for a bit." I drove my father's old car to the empty lot by Forest Park. Opening the door, standing in the headwind, I screamed once. For the first time in years, I let betrayal sound out loud, without compressing it into politeness, without smiling as if nothing had happened. I replayed the video again, not to watch, but to remember. To remember that from today, there was nothing to salvage. No white space left for excuses. No words soft enough to forgive. When I returned home, I typed a message to Samuel. I want everything. Schedules. Messages. Hotel receipts. I'll prepare the rest myself. That night, Portland's rain fell steadily. The sound of water hitting the old roof tiles like someone softly knocking at my heart. Beat after beat, unending. I sat on the bedroom floor, back against the bookshelf, the laptop closed since morning, my phone face down as if to delay reality, but it still lit up. A message from Emily. "I know you're in a fog right now, but I want you to read this. Please don't read it as a wife. Read it as someone just stepping out of a glass box." I opened the link. The article appeared. Gaslighting in Marriage, 9 Signs You're Being Manipulated Without Knowing. I skimmed the headline, but by the second paragraph, I stopped. Have you been called too sensitive when hurt by behavior clearly disrespectful? Have you asked yourself, am I crazy? Have you apologized for crying? Have you explained that you're not blaming, you just want to be understood? And finally, have you been slowly isolated from family, friends, your own emotions, while still being praised as the ideal wife? Each line like a blade, but strangely, it didn't make me bleed anymore. It was like peeling off wrongly placed bandages, returning to me a feeling I thought I'd lost, the feeling of not being wrong. I pressed the video call button to Emily. She answered in warm yellow light, barefaced, hair tied up, still holding a tour guide book. I said nothing, just breathed. She looked at me through the screen, speaking slowly. "I've been there, Bella. I've been called annoying for crying when he stayed out all night. I've heard, I don't have to explain everything. You're just overthinking." And I also once thought, maybe it's me being weird. But no, we're not crazy. We just loved the wrong person too long. I put my hand over my face. Not to cry, but to keep down the rage rising in my throat. The rage not at Carter anymore, but at the me of past years. The woman who once bowed and apologized for being hurt. He told me to stop making everything a tragedy, I whispered. Emily nodded, her eyes softening. They always say that when they don't want to take responsibility. We didn't say much more, but I knew what I had just received from my friend was not just an article, nor just sympathy. It was a vital confirmation. I'm not complicated. I'm not weak. I have been too kind inside an unjust system. When the call ended, I opened my notebook again, writing a short line, not underlined, not bolded, but the birth of an irreversible decision. I will not apologize anymore. I will reclaim myself. Thursday morning, 7:26. My phone lit up. An email from Samuel. Full package, per request. I opened it, my heartbeat steady. Inside was a folder containing 43 attachments, organized by date, from 6 months ago to last week. Each file was a shard of truth I had long suspected, but never touched. I scrolled down. Photos of Carter and Avery Lane, his blonde secretary, walking out of the Hampton Inn, the room bill charged to his company credit card, a text that read, "I'll be home late, client meeting," when in fact they were dining at Ruth's Chris. There was even car footage. Carter leaning over to kiss Avery in the front seat, then pulling her into the back. There were images from our bedroom, Avery holding our wedding photo frame, flipping it face down before climbing into bed. Samuel had also attached a tracking log. April 14th. Met in company parking lot at 9:15 p.m. 5/1, lunch break at hotel, 86 minutes. June 11th. Trip to Chicago. Carter booked a room for 2, signed at front desk. 6 months. Consistent, unashamed, careless. I printed every image, mounted each on ivory craft paper, encased them in plastic covers. 38 packets, exactly matching the number of guests my mother-in-law listed. I arranged each file inside the party menu folder, disguised like elegant hors d'oeuvres. When I finished packing, my mother handed me a small linen pouch. "Take this. It's your grandmother's handkerchief. She used it when she walked away from her second marriage. She always said, 'A woman can cry, but after that, she must stand.'" I nodded. For the first time in years, I stepped out into the garden, looking at the lavender bushes my mother planted. No one called me from the fence. No one gently issued orders. There was only the sound of my own footsteps on the earth, and the certainty I wouldn't serve that dinner as a dutiful wife. I would return it exactly as it deserved to be remembered. I replied to Samuel's email. "Thank you. What I'm about to do isn't revenge. It's a funeral for illusion." The plane trembled lightly as it passed through turbulence above the Michigan lakes. I leaned slightly, looking out the window, the deep blue sky stretching under the wings as if everything behind me was slowly falling into its rightful place, in the past. In my hands was the brown leather notebook with its familiar string tie. I opened to the page marked with a piece of embroidered handkerchief, the one my mother had silently tucked into my bag that morning at the airport. I smiled. A small smile, but a true one, because I knew. My mother understood more than she ever said. And last night, in the little kitchen, amid the smell of baked apples and the steady tick of the clock, for the first time, my mother and I spoke as two women, not just mother and daughter. I remember leaning against the sink while she sat at the table, holding a cup of tea, the warm light illuminating the wrinkles near her eyes. I spoke plainly. "I have proof Carter cheated." For the past 6 months, with his secretary, in the car. In our bed, my mother set her tea down and looked up. Her eyes didn't well with tears as I expected. There was only a quiet sorrow, as if she had already known. She asked softly, "What are you going to do?" I took a breath. "I'll return everything. At the anniversary party. Not because I want revenge, but because I need to end this the right way. No screaming, no waiting to hear another explanation." She didn't object, but her voice dropped. "Are you sure this won't make you bitter?" I sat across from her. "I used to wonder that. But not anymore. I'm not choosing to be cruel. I'm just refusing to be compliant ever again." A pause. My mother folded the handkerchief, smoothing it out. "I once forgave your father when he cheated. I thought keeping the family together was a woman's duty. But looking back, I'm not sure it was worth it." I looked at her softly. "And I don't want my children one day to learn that lesson from their mother." She nodded. A slow, deep nod. Then she poured more tea into my cup. Then do it. But do it with clarity, not bitterness. Let them remember. You didn't disappear. You just stopped being silent. The plane's overhead speaker came on, announcing our descent. I closed the notebook, still holding the embroidered handkerchief tightly. This time, I wasn't returning as a submissive wife preparing a party. I was returning as someone who knew exactly how to clear the final table. Not with food, but with the truth. That evening, I returned to Lansing in silence. Carter knew I was coming back from Portland. He had driven me to the airport earlier that week, and his mother had been texting nonstop with party demands. But when I stepped through the door, bag still in hand, he glanced over and only asked, "Did you order the peach tart?" Mom said, "Don't forget it this time." I nodded, smiling. "It's ordered. Everything's on track." He didn't ask if I was okay, didn't ask about my mother. He noticed nothing strange, and that was what I needed most. The carelessness of a man who didn't know he was standing at the edge. I went to the kitchen, reheated some leftover soup, set it out on the table, called Carter down. He ate while scrolling through his phone, murmuring thanks like a habit, then went upstairs to video call his mother. I stayed at the table, spoon still in hand, already mentally arranging tomorrow's plan. That night, after he slept, I quietly opened the suitcase hidden beneath the bed. Inside were the 38 laminated evidence files, arranged and numbered. Each file a record. Carter and his secretary. In the car, in the hotel, in our bedroom. Each photo a cut, a silent slash against the facade he'd maintained for 8 years. I checked each file, wiped down the plastic, and handwrote guest numbers in the top right corner of each cover. Friday morning, Carter left early. He said he had a meeting with a construction partner, but I knew it was simply to avoid being home while I prepared the party, because to him, that was housework, my job. He still believed I would bake like always, arrange the flowers in Melody's color scheme, set the tablecloth just how he liked it. And I let him believe it. That entire day, I worked in silence. No radio, no podcast, no calls. Just the sound of scissors slicing paper, plastic sheets stacking in boxes, and a marker ticking through the list. I packed everything into a large cardboard box, wrapped in cream-colored party paper. Elegant, tasteful, just like the aesthetic my in-laws so prided themselves on. Saturday morning, Carter left again, citing an urgent issue at the site. But I didn't care. I made a cup of black coffee, sat by the kitchen window, and looked out at the changing leaves. The sky over Lansing was gloomy, but my mind had never felt clearer. At 1:30 p.m., the house seemed to hold its breath. Everything was set. 38 porcelain plates on the long dining table, each covered with a gleaming silver dome, hiding not a dish, but a photo dossier of Carter and Avery Lane. The thickest folder was for Carter, placed at the head of the table. On the back of the first photo, I wrote, "I hope this gift is worthy of the 8 years you wasted of my life." The tablecloth was smooth, the chairs aligned, the scented candles lit. It looked like a perfect celebration. But this time, I wasn't the server. I was the stagehand. I changed into a white linen dress, hair in a low bun, pulled my suitcase to the door. Carter texted, "Everything okay?" I replied, "Perfect." "I'm heading out to pick up a few things, back soon." He didn't suspect a thing and replied he'd be home by 5 p.m. I closed the door softly. At 4 p.m., en route to Capital Region Airport, the Uber driver asked, "Going somewhere far?" I smiled into the rearview mirror. Far enough not to hear excuses. At 5 p.m., the guests began to arrive. Everyone smiled, posed for photos, thinking the 8th anniversary party would be like every other year. Melody beamed. Carter clutched a business partner's arm, eyes glancing at his watch. But when the silver domes were lifted in unison, silence shattered like glass. No food, no peach tart, only images of Carter and Avery Lane. In the car, in hotels, in my bedroom. Company bills, texts, still frame videos. A family friend trembled. "Oh my God!" a company staffer gasped. "He used company funds!" Carter stood frozen. His mother swayed, grasping at excuses. "Call Natalie. Stop this." But the phone displayed a cold message. "This number is no longer in service." At that moment, I was sitting at an airport cafe in O'Hare, a plane ticket to Honolulu in front of me. Beside it, a glass of iced tea and the embroidered handkerchief. I didn't need to see them panic. I didn't need to hear late apologies. I had already left, not to escape, but to rewrite my story. I landed at Honolulu Airport at 7:23 a.m. on Sunday. For the first time in 8 years, there was no one waiting at the gate. No messages reminding me to buy duty-free perfume for my mother-in-law. No emails from Carter detailing his schedule. Only sun, wind, and me alone with a small suitcase packed with a few linen dresses, a tablet, and a stack of books I had never read because I didn't have time. The hotel I booked was a standalone bungalow by Waikiki Beach. Not the type Carter would have chosen. No golf course, no lavish cocktail parties. Just a clean white bed, light linen curtains, and the sound of waves that needed no permission. I sat numbly on the porch, phone still off. There was something I realized. I didn't know what I liked. For 8 years, I picked restaurants because Carter liked steak, chose curtain colors per my mother-in-law's taste, cut my hair short because my husband said it looked more professional. Now, I opened my suitcase, slipped into a long white cotton dress, let my hair down in the sea breeze, and walked barefoot onto the sand. I sat down, back against the trunk of an old palm tree, and turned on my phone for the first time since yesterday. There were 43 missed calls from Carter, 12 from Melody, 8 messages from employees at Carter's company, and 1 single line from Samuel. They know. Rest well, I smiled. A real smile for the first time. Not one to appease someone, not the polite smile reserved for cocktail parties, but a smile from the throat, from a chest finally getting lighter by the minute. In the afternoon, I walked along the beach and came across a group of local women camping and making lei garlands. A teenage girl invited me to sit down. "Want to learn?" I nodded. Each plumeria blossom, every string tied tight, I quietly threaded together the things once severed in me. Small joys, slowness, connection without calculation. When I returned to my room, I wrote a single line in my notebook. I used to think I was a good wife. But now I want to know, if I'm not someone's wife, then who am I? I didn't have an answer. But I was sure of one thing. Tonight, I would sleep without waiting for a door to open, without hearing Carter's voice calling, "Natalie, can you bring up the wine?" Without pretending to have a headache to avoid the coldness of a marriage reduced to obligation. That night, I slept the best I had in years. No more performing. No more waiting to be chosen. Just Natalie, a woman who had closed a chapter with her own hands and was finally learning how to live for herself. The next morning in Hawaii, I was sitting on the wooden porch, holding a cup of hot jasmine tea, when the phone buzzed. Emily was calling from Portland. As soon as I answered, she laughed. "I bet you're somewhere staring at the ocean without a care for all those unworthy people anymore, right?" I smiled, but said nothing. My silence, perhaps, was the clearest answer. Emily recounted everything that happened after I left. She said Carter was stunned as he opened each dome cover. At first, he thought it was some cruel prank. But then, when he saw the photo of himself kissing Sierra in the car, he turned pale. Melody, my mother-in-law, initially shouted, "This is an insult!" But when the next photos appeared, in the hotel, in Carter's office, in our own bedroom, she fell silent. Emily hesitated before continuing. "Do you know how everyone at the party reacted?" When each cover was lifted, no one could speak. But then, the murmurs began. Someone cried in shock. Others quietly stood and left. But most just stared at Carter and Sierra, as if the two of them were a stain on the entire room. Emily's voice dropped. "You weren't there, but trust me." Melody was the one who looked the most shattered. She stood frozen by the window, staring at the table where a photo showed Sierra smiling. On your and Carter's wedding bed. I closed my eyes. The sea breeze felt softer, because the weight inside me had lightened a little. Emily sighed. After that, Sierra fled the party. She tried to stay composed, but people whispered, cursed, called her trash, homewrecker, even a creature without dignity. She said nothing, just turned and walked straight out, her heels sinking into the wet grass. A pause. Then Emily added, I have a friend who lives near her. That night, she said, Sierra's husband found out everything through a live stream one of the guests had recorded. No one knows who filmed it, but it spread fast. And the moment Sierra got home, her husband stormed out and said just one thing, get out of my house. Tonight. I was speechless. Emily's voice softened. I know you still have doubts, wondering if you went too far. But Natalie, you're not crazy, not petty, not ungrateful. You've just finally started living as yourself, I smiled. Not from revenge, but from relief. For the first time, I saw my life through someone else's lens, and I saw a woman who had endured too much, forgiven too long, stayed silent too deeply. And now, finally, I was no longer a distorted version of myself shaped by someone else's definitions. That afternoon, as the sun began to set over Waikiki, I sat on the balcony of the rental apartment, watching the sky turn a deep orange. My mother, Margaret, brought out 2 glasses of chilled coconut water and sat beside me. Neither of us spoke for the first few minutes, only the sound of waves and children laughing down on the beach. Then she gently touched my hand. You've endured more than I realized, Natalie. I turned to look at her. The woman I once thought was too traditional, too strict, too silent in the face of her daughter's pain. But today, her eyes no longer held that coldness, only sorrow and gratitude that I had made it through. I used to think you didn't understand me, I said, and at times, I resented you. For telling me I had to sacrifice, preserve the family, be patient. But now, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just sad that those very words kept me in a false life for 8 years. My mother squeezed my hand, her eyes wet. You have every right to be sad, to blame me. I grew up in a different era, where women were taught that silence was noble, endurance was honor. I passed down what I thought was right, but now I know I was wrong, I was quiet. The sorrow in me felt finely named by someone else. She continued, voice breaking. When you called and said, I want to go to Hawaii. Just the 2 of us, I knew. You were no longer the girl who needed her husband's permission. You had grown, not just in age, but through pain. And I knew I had to relearn how to be your mother. I rested my head on her shoulder for the first time in years. That shoulder was no longer cold or distant, but a place I could finally relax, like a child running from a storm. Are you afraid of being alone? She asked. I smiled and answered slowly. No. I'm only afraid of one thing, that if I didn't step out, I would keep living a life others had planned for me. As for loneliness, I've lived among my in-laws, through parties and polite calls, and still felt empty, so I'd rather be truly alone than falsely connected. My mother nodded, her eyes shimmering. You are no longer Carter's wife, no longer the Patterson daughter-in-law, but you're still my daughter, and this time I'll be here, not to tell you to endure, but to remind you, you deserve a better life. I squeezed her hand. In that moment, I didn't need advice, or plans, or good luck wishes. I just needed one simple sentence I had never heard from her before, and now she had said it. You deserve this. That's my story. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Where are you watching from? Because someone out there might need to hear the very journey you've just made.